Hello people and welcome back to the 22nd Java tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to talk about a new topic, that is method overloading. Let me first state what actually method overloading means. Java actually provides you facility to name many of your methods having the same method name. Like, say a class has a method test, so it can have many methods of test, many methods named test. So the question arises, how would the compiler know that which test method are we talking about? So first you have to know that overloading means that you can use a similar name for different methods. That is what method overloading means. So let's try it out and then you'll catch up. Excuse me, my throat is a bit sore. Okay, so we just like the last tutorial, we calculated the volume of a cuboid. We'll do the same in this tutorial, but what we're gonna do is we're not gonna make a constructor out of it. We're just gonna define methods, overloaded methods actually, to make the concept more clear. Okay, so let's just define a method that is public void volume. This is one method. Next method would also be public void volume, and third method would also be public void volume. As you can see, I'm getting a couple of errors. That is because the compiler is actually confused. Which volume are we referring to? So even though the names of the methods while overloading the methods can be same, but there has to be something that distinguishes the methods. And what can be used to distinguish methods having the same names? Now, the answer to that question are parameters. Overloaded methods will always have different parameters. Okay? So let's say first volume method will have three parameters. That would be double height, double length, and double width. And this parameter, when we take the arguments, we're gonna just initialize these instance variables with those parameters. So this dot height equals height, this dot length equals length, and this dot width equals width. Now moving on to the next method, overloaded method. This method will have only two parameters. That would be double height and double length. Okay, so this would be this dot height equals height, this dot length equals length. Now since there are only two parameters but we have three instance variables to be declared, so the third instance variable, we're gonna declare it within this function on our own. So for this instance, for this method, width will be equal to, say, 24. Okay, now moving on to the next method, overloaded method. This method is going to have only one parameter, that would be double height. Therefore this dot height equals height, and since there is only one parameter to declare the instance variable, the rest of the two instance variables we're gonna have to declare ourselves. So let's just declare them. Length equals 30 and width equals 24. Now these are three parameters that will calculate the volume. So let's just write the code that would help them calculate the volume. So I'm just going to directly print the volume. System out print line the volume of method 1 is, and then I'm going to multiply everything. That would be height into length into width. Oops, I forgot the concatenation sign. See, that's what happens if you forget the concatenation sign. Now I'm just gonna copy this statement and paste it in all the three. So what's gonna happen is when I'm gonna create a single object, and I'm gonna call all the three methods with that object. So you'll see how that works out. Let's define an object. Second underscore class obj equals new second underscore class. Now I'm not gonna pass here anything since I don't have a constructor. Oops. Okay, so these braces will be just empty. Now I'm gonna use obj. I'm gonna use obj method, obj object to call different methods. Now what method to be called? I've got volume. That's it. But I have got three volume methods who have same name as volume. So how's the compiler gonna know which method to call? Actually, it's gonna know by the parameters, by the arguments that I pass here. If I pass three arguments, say 10, 30 and 24, so it's gonna know I have to call that volume method which has got three parameters. So this method has got three parameters, so this object would call this method. Okay, now moving on, if I write object dot volume and I only pass two parameters, that would be 10 and 30. So oops, messed up the spelling. So now it's gonna know that since I've passed only two arguments, so it's gonna call the method which has only two parameters in it, and that one is right here. So it's gonna call this method because it has got only two parameters and it has got two arguments. Now if I write object dot volume and just pass one parameter, say 30, now it's gonna know that I have to call a method which has got only one parameter, that is this method. So this is how actually the compiler comes to know when we overload the methods. It comes to know by the arguments that have been passed to the method while calling using an object. So this is how the compiler knows which method is actually to be called. So let's run this and see what happens. See, I've got everything right here. When I call the first method, the passing values were 10, 20, 10, 30, and 24. So it called the first method where there were 3 parameters and it printed this. When I called the second method using the object and passed only 2 parameters, then it called this method with two parameters and it printed this. The volume of method 1 is whatever I passed. Okay, this had to be 2. I forgot to make changes, but just cope up with me, guys. Okay, so it would be 10 into 30, and the third instance variable we declared ourselves, and we declared that as to be 24. So 10 into 30 into 24, so that would give us again 7200. Now when we called this method, it had known that I have to call a method which has got only one parameter, so it called this method where it had only passed one parameter, so we had to declare 2 of instance variables on ourselves. We declared length as 30 and width as 24, so it will be 30 into 30 into 24, so it would print the product of these 3. So that would give us the length of the method 1 is 21600. That's how overloading works. Again, overloading is nothing but having same name of methods in the same class which actually differ only by the parameters passed in them. That is the only difference in the overloaded methods. That makes the programming quite simpler. You don't have to come up with names every single time you define a method. So this pretty much sums up overloading of methods. If you still have any queries, you can always comment them and I'll get back to you. And don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Okay, bye bye.